Welcome to another Indie Dev Showcase, highlighting the many indie games we play here on the channel. If you'd like to submit a game for a future video, please reach out. But otherwise, let's begin. We are starting things off with Mail Time. This is a cozy 3D platformer where you play the latest of the Mail Scouts, delightful little creatures who must deliver mail and other things to the denizens of the woods. So, put on your little shroom hat, get your letter, and get ready for some very casual 3D platforming. The game itself is essentially a kind of collect-a-thon 3D platformer. You'll go around the woods, meeting the various people who will need letters or other things delivered. And you have to, well, do that. As you explore, you'll be able to find various cosmetic items and more collectibles to go for. If you're hoping for a very involved 3D platform in terms of movement and jump tech, Mail Time is not that. It's designed to be, if you're just going for the delivering angle, a very short experience. If you want to go for everything, it will probably take a little bit longer than that. Your kind of key movement here is using one of your letters as a kind of glider for some floaty action. All in all, this one was okay. It can be a little bit hard to navigate as there is no kind of map or any kind of like markers you can place down. And again, this is one of those games where if you're looking for like more of a relaxing experience, I would give it a try. But if you're someone like me who likes their platformers have a lot more in terms of tech and kind of tricks to go with it, this may be a little too cozy for you. And now for the opposite end of the spectrum of coziness, we go to Savant, Ascent, Redux. This is the kind of a remastered version of the original Savant Ascent, and it features music from the artists who I am not too familiar with, but considering that it's all kind of music from them, I'm muting this section just in case we get into any YouTube copyright claim issues. Our gameplay here is kind of 2D, I guess almost like shooter-esque. You are on two platforms, and it is up to you to ride this tower as far up as it can go, dealing with all the enemies, projectiles, and other things that get in your way. You have a kind of charge shot that you can enable to do massive damage, and it can also be kind of powered up as you kill smaller enemies. You need to be very mindful about where you're standing as enemies and projectiles can move between the different platforms, and sometimes you'll need to kind of hop between them to best avoid them. While the music is going and you're blasting, you'll deal with ever-increasing waves of enemies and some very interesting boss fights as well. The game features multiple modes of difficulty, and this one is certainly not going to be on the easier side. As the game goes on, the enemy patterns get more and more advanced, and so do the means to try and avoid them. If I had an issue with this one, is I would have liked a better tell in terms of what is like the safe line. The game does not really give you like bullet protections or stuff like that we see from kind of shmups and shooters. And it's very easy to jump when the thing is just going to like kind of casually curve up and smack you, and you're supposed to kind of just like dodge to the side. The game has, again, increased modes from the original, including even like a survival. You only have like one continue to get through it. And this one is definitely an interesting take. It is short, sweet, and very challenging. And if you're looking for some great music and great shooting to go with it, then it is a very easy recommendation. We now go to Dungeon Drafters. This is what happens if we combine like a mystery dungeon with a deck building roguelite. You have been sent to an island in order to investigate the strange creatures and goings on. And to do that, you must explore a variety of biomes, collect the cards and resources you needed to build up a deck, and try to solve the mystery as to what is happening. The kind of twist of this game is that you'll be able to build your deck out of various elements. Each element is a deck style onto itself. Red or fire is going to be oftentimes direct damage or, of course, fire-related cards. blue being kind of frozen or water can freeze enemies, and so on and so forth. Certain abilities and cards can only be added to your deck provided you have enough of that specific style. So what that means is if you want to build a deck that has like cards of every single variation, you can certainly do that. But you'll be limiting yourself from getting access to the higher quality or more powerful cards. You can focus on 1, 2, whatever. As you play through the game, your main goal at the start is to unlock new cards. Each time you go into a biome, the game will procedurally generate the area, and each biome has its own specific set of enemies and environmental things you can deal with. At the end of each floor, you have the decision to either go down the next floor or retreat out of the dungeon with any resources you've collected. This is important because you need said resources in order to unlock new booster packs that will enable you to get access to more cards, which you can then start filling out your deck more and start making more use of the advanced abilities. Combat is entirely turn-based, as you'll have to deal with the various enemies and the rules surrounding them given the cards that you bring into the dungeon, and that is really well done. I like that there is a very fundamental difference between using the different elements, and this sets up very different strategies that can be overpowered in the right hands, and if you, well, pun intended, play your cards right. While all this sounds good, it does have a few issues that I ran into. Because of how the enemy designs work, and specifically how they relate to the cards you have access to, some fights feel like they stretch on very long, especially you have up against enemies who can summon new enemies, heal their friends, etc, etc. And you are limited in your deck. Once you play a card and it goes in the discard pile, that does not automatically come back to you after the fight is over. You must go to kind of a rest area to refill your cards for the remainder of that dungeon. There are boss fights you'll need to deal with, and if you go into a boss fight unprepared or for the first time, it's very easy for the rules surrounding that fight just to stomp you. And if you die before you can get to a escape point and kind of bank your resources, all those resources you've collected during that dungeon run are gone. And that can be very punishing. The game feels like it's trying to square that circle between being like a mystery dungeon full-on traditional roguelike, but still giving you like roguelite elements and progression to help you. And the progression elements are very important because being able to unlock and get access to stronger cards is kind of how this game is being balanced. When you're just starting out with all kind of the basic cards from the different elements, it doesn't feel like you really have a lot of tools at your disposal to deal with like moderate to advanced enemies. And unfortunately, that kind of slow progression is oftentimes the killer for roguelite design. Dungeon Drafters is a great idea, and I think a really solid concept. If you're looking for a slow burn deck builder, and one with quite a variety of cards to mess around with, then I definitely recommend you play this one. But if you're looking for something that is very snappy and quick to get into, then I don't think this game will be the right one for you. We now go to the demo for Divine Frequency. This is a shooter, cosmic horror, philosophical, souls-like survival horror, and a whole lot of other weird adjectives on top. You are in a strange world, and you are trying to discover what is going on and possibly ascend the mortal coil. And to do that, you are going to explore some very dark and damp places, meet a lot of strange creatures, and get, of course, into a lot of shooting as well. The game definitely nails this kind of creepy, dirty aesthetic that I think last time I saw a game like this would be something like Lost in Vivo or the original Condemned. You'll explore the world looking for resources, items, and more, and you'll be able to build your character out of various stats that affect things at various decision points, as well as trying to look for more means of upgrading yourself. Our combat here is fast-paced, and you'll need to make sure or make use of every bullet and melee that you have access to, and try not to get killed by whatever is out there. Oh! The story is definitely going some strange places as well, and while we did not get all the way through the demo, they were definitely hinting at a lot of things that are going to be happening in it. If I had any issue from the demo, is that I did not like the kind of optional Souls-like boss designs. There are arenas you can get into where you'll fight a boss one-on-one, and it kind of feels like fighting the Marauder from Doom Eternal times 100, as you'll need to properly parry their shots and get in for damage, and it's completely kind of divorced from the rest of the game. And it felt very awkward for me to do, especially given the higher speed they're supposed to be moving and reacting, compared to kind of like the more slower survival horror driven aspects. Now, it has been quite a while since we played this demo, so I do not know if things have changed since then, but Divine Frequency looks like it's going to be a very interesting and original shooter when it's released, so if you're looking for a lot of weirdness to go with your first person shooting, then certainly give this one a try. We now go to Holstin, which I'm pretty sure I may be butchering that name. The demo that is currently available is split between kind of different parts of the collective whole, but the game itself takes place in 1990s Poland, when a strange slime substance has been engulfing and corrupting a town. You have arrived there to try and find your friend, and of course you will be finding lots of monsters, puzzles, and items to uncover. The game itself features a really interesting use of kind of pixel art to give this effect of being in 3D. When you go into combat, the game switches to an over-the-shoulder perspective, reminiscent of like Resident Evil 4 and that era of action shooting. When you're outside of combat, you'll be able to sneak around the town, looking for clues, hiding from enemies, and trying to solve the puzzles that are around. I like the style of this one, but it did feel a little bit janky in terms of the combat. Swapping from the isometric perspective to third person or behind the back can be very jarring, especially when you're trying to aim at enemies that are slowly slithering their way towards you. When you're doing the adventure gameplay, since you're fully rotating the camera around your character, it can be very hard sometimes to spot an important collectible or a point of interest, since you can only interact with something if the camera is showing it. And I got lost during the demo a few times because I didn't have the camera rotate at the right angle to notice a clue or an important item, so I just kept wandering around and around, unsure of what did I miss. There's no mini-map or map functionality that we played during the demo version, and that meant that there was no way to kind of tell if I completely found everything or not in a specific room. And that can sort of come back to bite you if you were talking about even larger areas with even more things to find here and there. Still, this was played about a year or so ago from the demo when you are watching this footage, and I'm sure that the kinks will be worked out in the main game when it is released. And the demo itself kind of split everything up into kind of these segmented aspects, so I'm curious to see how everything is playing with all cylinders firing. So if you are interested in a survival horror game with a very unique premise and style to it, then this game and the demo is certainly an easy check. And for the last game of this week's showcase is a Sigil of the Magi. This is a kind of tactical strategy meets deck building roguelike. You control a group of 3 adventurers who are trying to find the Sigil of the Magi, and standing in their way will be a variety of enemies, goons, and more that are going to try and stop you. In a similar vein of, say, Slay the Spire, or even something like Into the Breach, each character is a unique individual. They have their own unique passive and cards that they can play. Your job is to figure out how to best use their abilities in order to deal with the enemies and try not to get killed or hurt along the way. The game features a kind of different take on using your card or card manipulation, is that you kind of have like this little stand that is below the actual field itself. You can use energy to place cards on the stand and essentially bank those cards for later on. Any bank cards can be used and they will not require more energy, so this allows you to essentially always use your energy turn by turn or set up a later turn for a larger impact. You'll of course get access to more cards, artifacts that can change things around, etc, etc. And from our playlist, we only had a chance to play through kind of like the initial batch of heroes, but there are additional ones with their own unique cards and rules as well. If you're looking for like a super advanced take on either the deck building or the tactical strategic layer, then Sigil is not going to really be that kind of game. Once you kind of know what you're doing, if you have any familiarity with both genres, you should be able to start figuring out what are some really solid combos and start ripping and tearing through the game. Still, I found this one to be very charming to play, and in a way reminds me of kind of like the mix of designs of something like Warriors of the Nile, but again, not as complicated or as difficult to play as that one. So if you like a bit of deck building and tactical strategy and looking for a really good kind of entry-level combination of the two, then this is definitely a game worth checking out. So with that said, we're going to wrap up this week's showcase here. You'll find links to all the games down below. Once again, let me tell you your game for a future stream and showcase. Please reach out, let me know what you think about these ones as well in the comments if you did get a chance to play them. And with that said, everyone, thanks for watching, and see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and if you're interested in more in my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.